All right, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are watching today. My name is Bryan Shue. I have with me Zack Knight, a U.S. military veteran and fantastic gentleman I've met through Brian Arrington and through LinkedIn. I want to thank you, Zack, for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with me today. And I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself. So, Zack, turn it over to you, man.
Awesome, Brian. Thank you so much for having me today, man. It's a real pleasure to be able to come on and share a little bit about myself and the story of what I'm working on. And first and foremost, I'm a former police officer in Metro Atlanta. I was that silly guy that did all the SWAT gang narcotics type stuff, and at some point, a realization hit me that I wanted to blow up bigger and badder things, and I joined the infantry. Currently in the Georgia National Guard as an infantry platoon leader. Most recently, I was deployed to Afghanistan on a combat deployment in 2019. I came back in August. So I'm semi fresh back and back into running my business. Between my wife and I, we own four different businesses right now that we're pushing through this COVID nonsense.
Thank you so much for that, Zach. And I know it is nonsense for a lot of us. It's like this is so crazy to deal with this, and this is why myself and some of our other members of the Full Me Digital team have started this series of lockdown with thought leaders. So you guys can get some information from some people that are doing something a little bit different, and have some little bit of positive outlook into the environment that we're dealing with. Zach, speaking from their standpoint, what is it that you would tell? Oh, hold on. Let's see. Oh, is that better? Ah, there we go. Told you technology doesn't like me today. What would you tell your civilian counterparts about being in today's environment?
I kind of draw from both military and police experience in this type of question where you have to realize now is not the time for the knee jerk reaction, the whole buying up all the toilet paper. That type of thing is not what we need. That's exactly what led to the 08, 09, 2010 crisis, right? The economic fallout, because people got scared. They started selling off stocks, the stock market crashed, right? Now we're kind of seeing the inkling of that now, where everybody's panicked, the lockdowns happen, but people need to just hold fast, right? Hold fast. This too shall pass, one of those big old wise words of things, and realize that if you kind of hold the course right now, yeah, it's going to be a bit of an influx, but in a month, if we just stay the course and maintain some logic attached to what we're doing or our actions, I don't think we really have too terribly much to worry about.
And I think that that goes back to, us as military leaders. We're all used to this kind of chaos. We're all, this is what we trained for. So for us, it's all about this is normal. It's normal. Let's just be honest. It's normal for a veteran. It's normal for a combat veteran, especially because this is the environment we work in. For civilian counterparts, not normal. But here, lockdown with thought leaders, it gives you that sense of hope that there are people out there that are saying, "Hey, we can get through this. We can drive forward. It's not the end of the world." It feels like it because we're all at home. We're spending time with our families that we didn't usually do. I mean, I think that says a lot for everybody. We're all like, "Oh my God, our families are home. What are we supposed to do?" You know what? We work. We do our jobs. We continue our mission. We drive forward. So for you, Zach, what does your life look like now that you're home more, now that you're with your family more than ever?
Well, I think a great way to explain that is explain what my wife and I are doing business wise. And I love giving her organization a plug. We have a great mission, which in these current times where people are stuck in quarantine with each other that you might not be used to, she runs our nonprofit. It's called Surviving to Thriving. It's a domestic violence nonprofit that focuses on long term sustainability for victims of domestic violence. She is a nationally certified women's self defense instructor, and that's our headlining program, Women's Self Defense. It's called Rape Aggression Defense, and she's a little badass. Excuse me if I can't use that language on here, but this is the best way to explain her. She wraps me up in pretzels way too often. So outside of the nonprofit, we have a real estate holdings company that supports that as long-term housing and sustainability along with our lifestyle learning center. I own my own organization called Night Protection. It's a physical security consulting firm. So I focus on risk analysis, risk assessment, which again feeds perfectly into what's happening right now. And then I also most recently incorporated a media relations company that is where I host my podcast, Tactical Leadership. And then also my wife has a podcast, Surviving to Thriving, also that focuses on her mission with everything she's doing with the nonprofit. So setting that context on what we're doing, our life has not really changed in that we're entrepreneurs and we're working out of home. We're used to working out of home. What has changed the most for us is that now we're both at the house at the same time. That's where it gets really interesting, right? So I mentioned right before we started recording, I mentioned we also have our goddaughter with us. Our goddaughter is 3.5. As my wife likes to say, she's a three-nager because she has so much attitude now that we don't quite know how to handle it as non-parents, right? So we're still working through that. But I think that's what people should realize is, yes, there's a huge change to everybody's life. Everybody's going through the same thing, right? But what we need to focus on is how do we maintain the structure of our daily lives? Veterans, we get it. I still wake up at 04. I still work out by 05. I have my morning routine, very segregated, right? And I think that's huge, especially in entrepreneur space. But now that you have all these corporate folks that are now at the house that might want to sleep till 10 or quarantine and chill with Netflix and Hulu, I think a big thing to realize is you have to maintain that structure in order to maintain that productivity and maintain growing throughout this, where we don't have that recession personally when we get on the other side of this lockdown.
And that's a great point, because keeping a routine, what does routine mean to you, Zach? And this is for other leaders. What should routines mean to them?
Man, I think it's so vital where if I don't maintain my morning routine, it throws the flow of my day off. So like I said, I mentioned I wake up at 4, I'm in the gym by 5. So 4 a.m. I wake up and this is exactly my morning routine. You do all your hygiene, brush your teeth, all that nonsense, feed the dogs. But I also write 3 things I'm grateful for every day on the mirror. My wife does the same thing when she gets up. I make sure I'm in the gym by 5:30 at the very latest. So I get the blood flowing. You get that mindset right. And I think that's what's important about realizing what routine is. Routine is establishing your mindset for the day. So whether that's physical exercise, some form of gratefulness that you should put out there, that things you're grateful for, even in these tough times, but most especially in these tough times. And that can even go as far into meditation or journaling, something that gets your mind right about this is what we have to do today, but it kind of sets the foundation. That's what routine does for me. It sets that foundation about what my day and my week will look like.
That's great, and that's a great perspective, because I think that's true for a lot of us. Is we're not used to having a routine. For us, a routine is just we wake up when we wake up. We do our work when we do our work. We're at an office. Now we're not in the office. We're not segregated to a cubicle for 8 hours a day. We're able to be around our families. We're able to have those interactions that we've typically missed out on throughout the day because we're now home. And you break how set those routines up for yourself and for your family. Um, but here's a question I have and I know a lot of our viewers will have this. If I lost my job, what would you tell me to help me get through this?
2 things. Congratulations, because that's probably one of the best things that could happen right now for you if you use it properly. And when I say that, you look back at 08, 09, there are more millionaires created during that downturn in 08, 09, and 2010 than any other 3-year period in history, right? So now, if you lost your job, you probably weren't enjoying it in the first place, or the business was already in a bad spot. And now you have the opportunity to better yourself. Now that could be personal development, which I think is so key. You have podcasts you can listen to right now. This show, for example, is like perfect, right? Somebody can tune into this and get their daily inspiration, daily dose of whatever they need to realize how to structure what happens next. And that's what's so important is this lockdown. I'm connected. I have clients all throughout the country, right? And one of my clients up in Delaware said they're locked down until May 15th. So you're talking 6 weeks from the day today that we're recording it, that they're locked down where non-essential businesses are not going to be working. Well, 6 weeks is a long time. You can accomplish a lot of stuff in 6 weeks from personal development, from researching a credential or a certification you can get in that time. Right now, I'm in my last 2 classes for my MBA, and I'm finishing out my MBA with the concentration in security management. And now I'm taking like 4 classes during this time, because when's a better time to do it? When I have a little bit extra time on my hands, right? So the extra time on your hands, you can. I talk business, but you can go if you're a corporate person that has for the last 10, 20 years, you're 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the office. Now such a great time to reconnect with your family, reconnect with your pets. I've got fur babies, right? So now I go out on 2 walks a day with my dogs. They love it. I love it, right? So there's so many different things you can do to like better yourself right now, but now's not the time to have that panic and lack of motivation where you're just sedentary. I think that type of sedentary complacency in the law enforcement world, complacency kills. In military world, complacency kills. Right now is not the time.
You muted. You muted yourself.
Yeah, I
I
was.
was like, right. Oh, I missed it.
That's good, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
you don't
funny.
hear me slurping on my coffee.
But that's so interesting, especially in today's environment of being able to be at home and be able to enjoy those moments that you probably missed out on. And for a civilian that's never used to working at home, they're now into that environment of I'm seeing my wife or I'm seeing my husband every day. I'm seeing my kids more than ever. And I'm thinking, oh my God, these things are hellions. How did I ever raise these things? And but reality is you haven't really had a chance to because you've been focused on your career. And it's not that's a bad thing. Don't ever no nobody should ever knock that, but realize there has your priority's been that until now. And I think that's an interesting paradigm shift for our society is that we're now focusing more on what's at home versus what's on the job. And for this, think about this, for those that are watching, you're now able to now give that attention. You're able to now not just give that attention just to your job, but also to your family. And it's not to say that one's more important than the other because it isn't. And actually think about this, and I want your opinion on this. We're in a work-life balance. We're in a work-life blend.
That's an interesting way to put it. I haven't heard that before, so I like how you phrase that. A work-life blend, and I think right now there are so many different avenues to create that blend. And a great example is one of my clients right now. We are tomorrow launching a virtual dance phenomenon is what we're going to call it, right? Where he is a professional dancer by trade. He's danced with the likes of Justin Timberlake all the way up to Twitch, if you know Twitch, from Ellen, and So You Think You Can Dance. He's danced with all these people, and he is a sales consultant by trade. Like his business is sales consulting, but his passion is dancing. Well, sales just went out the window, just like a lot of corporate jobs for the next possibly 6 weeks to who knows how long, right? So when we started talking, and this was more of the tactical leadership business consulting side of what I work on, we started talking. He's like, man, I just really want to get dancing out there. I want to get people moving. I want to get the endorphins going. I want things happening. I'm like, okay, so let's do it. And tomorrow he actually launches. Tomorrow is in March 31st is the first day I don't know when this is going to release, but to put it in context, by the time this gets out, we'll have a couple episodes already recorded where he's doing an online virtual dance class where he's doing tutorials. He's doing all sorts of things from dances he knows to TikTok dances, because TikTok's the big thing right now. Like he's doing all of that, but the core behind it is it provides this family work blend where during your lunch break, he's doing it at 12 Central and 7 Central. He's up in the Midwest, so I try not to judge him too much for that part. But, I'm a Southern boy. I'm a Georgia boy. So, yeah, we have our own mindset on things. But but he's doing those 2 classes tomorrow. And if you look at what a now teacher at home can do, a parent that's now a homeschooling aspect, what better way to kind of get that movement and get that connectivity where you're having fun, you're blending your work, the kids' school, your spouse can hop on something like it. So I give that example to say there's so many new things coming out during this that you can further that connectivity by having fun during this. Now's a great time to really drive forward with that.
And that's fantastic. I mean, I love watching Twitch. I think he is fantastic, and I think this is a great opportunity. If you haven't had a chance to check him out, by all means, look him up. Watch some of his stuff; is amazing. I mean, I think I'm gonna have to watch that too because I have no rhythm, but you know what? I like watching other people dance, and I like to pretend I have it. But you know what? I know where my limitations are. But
So,
um,
Brian, what's funny about that is the actual format of what we're doing is we're going to do online dance battles. So the goal is we're going to have like professional dancers. We're also going to have the dad dancers that do the finger wag, and that's all we know how to do, right? So it's going to be fun all across. It's going to be so relatable to so many people. We're super excited about this going live. And it's going to be that type of fun where you have that professional dancer, but it's, again, what can we do to engage the dads, the moms, the kids during this time? And if we can find those silver linings right now, I think everybody's going to come out of this so much farther ahead than where we were 2 weeks ago.
And you brought up a great point about silver linings. And this is one thing that I like asking the people that come on to this because a lot of people are going to look for those. What silver linings are you seeing right now? Even if you're looking at 6 weeks into the future, what silver linings are you seeing right now?
For me personally, like I mentioned with the security, with night protection and the security stuff we're doing, um, as much as it pains me to admit to this, when economic recessions happen, crime rates go up, unemployment rates go up, retention becomes more of an issue. So a lot of what I focus on with that is creating safe and secure working environments for people. And that means physically, cybersecurity, psychological safety, where we talk about like toxic leadership. For me, a silver lining there is I've pivoted and started planning how can I best serve my audience on my podcast, my clients? How can I best serve them with my expertise? And I think that's like the biggest silver lining people can look at. What are you passionate about right now that you can devote time into? And how can you provide value to others? Me, with my experience, and I already have the company doing it, that's going to be the best avenue. The great silver lining for me is now people are looking for ways to, as a CEO in a business, they're looking for ways to bring their employees back to their environment in a safe and secure manner, right? So great silver lining for me, but I would challenge the audience. What's that specialty? What's that thing you're passionate about that you can now bring to the forefront because you have the time to put that out there? Go ahead and do that. Go ahead and put that out there. Bring that joy to the world. Bring that specialty to the world, and that's where you're going to find your silver lining attached to all this.
I think that's a huge point too. You talk about passion. You know, people say, "Oh, what you're so passionate. You're so passionate." It's passionate because I know what I want. And I think that's another thing we can take from this series and from just this whole lockdown and quarantine and everything. Finding out what that passion is. Finding out what wakes you up in the morning. I know what wakes me up. You know what wakes you up. But what wakes you up in the morning? What makes you think this is what I need to accomplish today? Or what can I make better in today? And having that kind of experience and having that kind of conversation with others can be enlightening for you. And I encourage you, as those that are listening, reach out and have those conversations with people. And Zach, for you, I know LinkedIn has been a huge driver for you in growing your business and growing your brand. What else have you found that can help drive that engagement, especially in today's times that are people are dealing with isolation and quarantine and social distancing? What drives your engagement? What helps you engage others that maybe you haven't thought of?
I think for me, it's about vulnerability and authenticity. I think those two things beyond the platform, like everybody has a platform, whether it's I'm more of that older millennial that's more of a Facebook guy than an Instagram guy, even though I'm still on Instagram, right? I'm on TikTok where I'm doing either security related videos or dumb dog videos because I have very crazy dog breeds in my house, right? But I think it's more about not necessarily the platform where, yes, my platform is very B2B right now with LinkedIn, but it's putting content on there that's authentic to myself and has that level of vulnerability where this is what I'm struggling with throughout all this, because we're all going to have struggles. It doesn't matter what your network looks like. It doesn't matter what your business looks like. This is all affecting us in a way that none of us really planned for. I planned for the recession with my business. I did not plan for an epidemic lockdown, right? I don't think anybody had that game plan going into 2020. So I look at it as, how can I be vulnerable and show, even though I'm a veteran, even though I'm a SWAT guy, how can I show these are my struggles while providing that value and staying authentic to my message? And I think that's where like LinkedIn is really starting to flourish with me for me, is that I'm bringing that vulnerability. Like, here's a struggle I had, so here's a case study on how I helped a client through it, or here's how I worked through it myself. And I think that's what's so key about this online medium right now, is you can be vulnerable and you can be authentic. And now you can show your day to day where you're having a dance battle in the living room with your kids. It's a great time to be alive. And I hope more people see it in that way.
And I think this brings up a great point, is that, let's be honest here. This is a great time. You have so much social media, you have so much connectivity. You should be taking advantage of that. And I know you're big on that, Zach, and I love that you're a champion for it. Because we need more. Let's be honest. We need more champions. We need more people saying, let me show you how I'm using it and see if it makes sense for you. And because who's better to tell me how to use a LinkedIn or TikTok than somebody that's actually using it and actually using it successfully. So again, reach out to people, can start building those networks. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a time for you to just sit back in your recliner and be like, well, the world's going to end and I'm just going to sit here. No, it's time for you to start building those networks, getting connected on LinkedIn. And Zach, how would somebody connect with you?
Man, like you mentioned, I'm across all social media, and probably too much social media, but I kind of like the Gary V mindset of, I'm going to throw everything I can out there just to maintain that document, not create type of mindset. For Facebook, really for all social media, you can find me. I'm Zack Knight. If you want my personal brand, feel free to reach out to me personally. For my podcast and more of my leadership content, the podcast is Tactical Leadership, but my handles are Be a Tactical Leader. And then for my security consulting firm, it's at Knight Pro LLC. And that's across everything from LinkedIn to Instagram to Facebook to TikTok to Twitter to yada, yada, yada. You'll be able to find me if you search one of those three.
That's fantastic. And let's be honest here. Having that ability to connect, having that ability to build that relationship across multiple mediums is beneficial, because you're going to see something different on each platform. And I think that's a key thing we need to bring out, is on your social media platforms, don't just copy and paste everything. Make it unique to you on each platform. And I think you've done very well with that, Zach. So tell us a little bit about that part of you in your content development.
Ooh, that's been a tough one, man, and it really goes back to that authenticity and that vulnerability. As with my background as veterans, it's really difficult sometimes for us to show that, because that's not what is bred in us in the military, right? You got to be hard all the time and never show weakness, quote unquote weakness. But what I really think about with my content, I've tried to stay true to my message now. While I was deployed in 2019, I hired a marketing firm. I spent about 25 grand on this marketing firm and got zero client acquisition off of it, because their vision for my brand did not align with my message. They were very much, you have to appeal to everybody. Don't say anything about the Second Amendment, because tisk you'll upset people, right? Well, my brand is military and police. It's all about Second Amendment, right? So if I don't focus on that type of message where I'm true to myself, then there was obviously zero engagement with it, because people could tell what's like manufactured, if you will. So for me, it's been, what content do I like to ingest, which is why I started a podcast. Like, I love leadership. I love researching leadership. I love the mindset behind leadership and the resilience that leaders have. It fascinates me. So I wanted to talk more about it. So I think that's where the best content comes from, is what are you interested in? and how can you put that in your own words to get your own message out about there? Because there's always that little bit of perspective change that you can bring into the world to start a little bit new part of that conversation.
Absolutely. And that's another thing we should be considering is how are we starting those conversations? And you don't start a conversation for the heck of it. You don't just start it just because. You start it for a purpose. And have you found that purpose of that conversation yet? I hope you have, especially with watching all these episodes of Lockdown with Thought Leaders. We want you to grow. We want you to start looking at the outside world as your oyster. I mean, let's be honest. The world is an oyster right now. It's just waiting to be opened. How are you going to open that oyster? And that's why I want Zach and invite others, leaders to this platform, because we all need to share. We all should be sharing this knowledge base with everybody around us, because no one is the number one expert. If you find no one expert, please somebody let me know, because I need to know that number one expert on everything, because they must be the smartest man in the world. I mean, Zach, you definitely got some great experiences, and I want you to share more of that with the world. And you know, if I was a leader today in dealing with this whole epidemic, what would you tell me to, and how what would you tell me to be more effective, or how would I be more effective? What should I do to be more effective? Oh, I don't know. What would I be? Can you hear me? Is that good?
Yep.
Okay. What would I be doing to be more effective to my team?
So that's an interesting question. It's something that I've really tried to kind of draw back to my policing days to investigate right now during this crisis, because it's kind of uncharted territory for a lot of people, where nobody expected everybody to go virtual, right? So when you look at the needs of human connectivity, the water cooler chit chat or the cubicle shout across match, people are motivated by other people. And now, when everybody's locked down, I don't think if you're not careful, you won't have that connectivity. You'll lose whatever culture you had in place. But now is such a great time for a leader to focus on building that culture now. If you didn't have a great culture before, now's the perfect time to rewrite that script. Or if you did have a good culture before, let's take it a step further. Okay. Let's do a morning video check-in, a morning cup of coffee, a morning cup of Joe, where everybody, hey guys, how's this going? Now here's your water cooler. Or let's do it's 5 o'clock somewhere wine moment, where everybody hops on and sips a glass of wine at 5 o'clock to end the day. And there are so many different things you could do. Online dance party. Hey, let's have a dance party with everybody being goofy, right? Or, hey, we're going to have a 30-minute outdoor competition where everybody has to send me a video of them going outside for 30 minutes. But you could also do it on this platform. Zoom is a phenomenal platform. For a solid $15 a month or something, you can have 100 participants, right? So as a leader, if you're not engaging your company right now, or your followers, or whoever, your team, if you're not engaging your team right now, I feel like you're truly failing, because there's so many avenues for you to be creative right now and show your authenticity, plus what culture you want to develop. And man, could you really change what's happening in your business to buy in? Now you're going to have that buy-in from the individual. You're going to have a buy-in of loyalty, so that as you're pushing through this potential recession that's coming, you're not going to have people jumping off the ship because they love what you did during this to bring them together.
And I think that's a great point. And let's be, and those of you that are listening that are leaders, Zach brought up a great option. How are you going to build your organization's culture when you're not together all the time? Who knows how long this may last? It may be permanent, where you're working from home on a more regular basis, and that's okay. That's our new normal, and we have to be okay with that normal. That normal is not a bad thing, and I know you've spoken on that a little bit. What is your thoughts about the new normal, Zach?
Man, I honestly absolutely love it, because there are so many organizations that have more of an antiquated perspective of remote working, and now everybody's been forced to do that remote work, right? And if you look at how to incorporate this after this lockdown, after everybody's back in the daily grind, how can you incorporate this exact same thing later that is an added benefit to your team, right? You're showing them you trust them to work from home. You're showing them that, hey, I want to do a solid for y'all by letting you work from home a day a week as a thank you for your loyalty through this and thank you for your hard work through this. So as a new norm, I think it's fantastic if the leader understands how to lead during this time. It is a totally different thing than what we were doing when we could talk face to face and you could engage face to face. So I think there has to be that delicate balance by the leader. But this new norm could be so fantastic for so many people leaning out. Like you can lean a business out now by not having to worry about people wasting an hour and a half of drive time just to get into Atlanta, right? So think about how much time you could save people and how much money you could save people and lean out your operation all at the same time while driving a better culture in your organization. Honestly, the possibilities to me are exciting because if somebody takes advantage of this now, they're going to come out so much farther ahead at the end of this.
And I think that's where, as leaders, we should step out and say, this is the vision that I have for my organization or for my team, as I look into the future of, what's 6 weeks from now look like? Well, let's build that out. Let's make that. So where when 6 weeks from now happens, it's not well, I don't know. We're just still here and we're still, suffering together. So hey, we're having fun. And it's like in reality, everybody's like, this isn't fun at all. I need out. And that's where the true values of you as a leader come out and say, what am I doing for my teams? What am I doing to show them that, hey, I get it. You're suffering. I'm suffering. We're all suffering. We're all dealing with some sort of stress because who knows? You might have to homeschool your kids now. You may have to take care of your pets because guess what? Mom's doing it. Mom's working or dad's working. Somebody's got to do it. You just can't tell your 2-year-old, hey, go take care of the dog because guess what? The 2-year-old's going to look at you like, I don't know what you're talking about. So having that balance and having that understanding as a leader saying, hey, my people are in unique situations just like me. Let me be more compassionate. Let me be more understanding of them and their needs. And that also goes back to communication. How are you communicating with your team? Are you just telling them everything or you saying, hey, what is it that I need to do for you? What is it that you need from me? Or what is it that you guys are struggling with that I can help make that smoother work for you? So, I think that's a show. You'll see a lot of leaders stepping up. And I hate saying stepping up because as a leader, you should always been there. You should always have been engaged. You should never have shrunk. And I think that's the problem we've had is some of the leaders have shrunk. And now you're getting to understand of, hey, I'm now forced into this. And for you, Zach, being forced into a leadership position, what is that like?
I think that's honestly, it's a great question. And I think it's so relevant to right now. And it's kind of tough for us that have that military experience to answer because it almost comes innately where we've been trained in that. But one thing I'm working on with my clients in this forced leadership role that kind of really changes is exactly what you said. And it's talking about having that compassion. And I kind of surmise it by talking about emotional intelligence, EQ versus IQ. And I think emotional intelligence is so key during this time of how to understand the needs, like you were talking about, how to understand how I can facilitate better. I think having that level of emotional intelligence with people you're leading, with your team, that's going to carry you so much further. You don't have to worry about being, I'm the best leader out here, right? There are so many resources and this broadcast, my podcast, there are so many resources like these two things that are talking to industry leaders that are talking about, this is what I've done to be successful. And I kid you not, almost every single time it's, oh man, emotional intelligence is so vital because if you can't understand what they want and how you can communicate that to them, they're never going to follow you during the tough times. And look at here, we're in tough times, right? So I would say focus on that emotional intelligence and how you can be the most relatable possible to their needs and how to facilitate what makes them successful during this time.
I think you bring up a great point of that emotional intelligence, because that's also been buried through a lot of our conversations is how do I be an emotionally intelligent leader? And I want to hear from you about that part of, and you brought up some, you brought it up a little bit, but let's dive a little bit more into that, because I think that's a great perspective that a lot of our leaders need.
I think it really, the best way to look at it, especially from the veteran perspective, is the exact opposite of emotional intelligence is do this because I told you to. This is an order, right? In the military, this is what we were trained as an officer. I'm used to saying, get this done, and it gets done, right? In the corporate world, you can't do that. That is the exact opposite of what emotional intelligence is, because there's no buy-in, right? To me, what emotional intelligence means, and if you want to exude emotional intelligence, it's about with people. Now's the time where you do that morning cup of joe, right? That outlines your care for them, and you have to set your ego aside. You have to show your vulnerability. You have to show your authenticity. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before when I talk about the content I'm putting out there. That's how you become relatable. You ask them questions. There's a phenomenal book, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. And it is one of the most eye-opening books where I've read through and like, man, I thought I was a good leader before, but was I asking that great question to invoke a great response, right? To invoke that honesty back and forth. And I think if as a leader, you can be authentic, you can be vulnerable, you can be honest with the people that you're leading, that's the very beginning of emotional intelligence. And then be quiet. So key. To be a great leader, you have to be able to actively listen to what they're saying. Maybe not the panic that they're saying it with, but what are they actually saying beyond, oh man, I'm freaking out, right? Because everybody's going to have that, but you have to kind of get that message out of what's really the problem that they're struggling with. And you have to ask those great questions to draw that issue out of that. I think that's where you're going to really hit that emotional intelligence is you're going to seem so relatable to those individuals because you're drawing those answers out and you're taking the time to understand them and their perspective right now. I think that's where emotional intelligence really becomes a great success.
And you brought up a great point, Zach, about perspective. And as leaders, that's what we need to be utilizing is that perspective as, hey, I understand we're all dealing with this. And like I said earlier, we're all in this together. We're all, suffering in some level. It's just some may be suffering more than others. Friends, they, they literally cannot go anywhere. They are stuck in their houses. Granted, I'm in Atlanta. I've been told to stay home, but I can still go places. I mean, I can still do things. Am I going to? No. As a leader, am I going to be out there saying, hey, just, do whatever the hell you want? No, I'm not. I'm going to be like, use some common sense. And that's another thing about today is are you as a leader, are you telling your people what they want to hear? Are you telling them what they need to hear? And I think that's a great conversation piece for us as leaders to say, what are you telling them? What is it that you're really telling them?
Yeah, I think it's a phenomenal conversation piece where you cannot, I think, and it kind of goes back to being an emotionally intelligence driven leader. You cannot tell them what they want to hear. And sometimes the truth is a very difficult conversation to have. But during these times, I think you have to have that level of honesty to outline expectations. 'Cause expectations during this time are huge. If your followers, if your team, they don't understand what's expected of them during this time, that they're still expected to be up at 9 o'clock working and not just sitting on the sofa. If you're having that type of engagement with your employees, those expectations need to be clear. You need to tell them very bluntly, we're pivoting and we're planning. And part of the pivot is that this is what I'm expecting of you. And if you're not doing that, I think that's where you're going to see a lot of businesses begin failing on the backside of this during the potential recession and during the potential fall off. Is if things were not done for 2 months, I'm thinking 2 months might be a good gap before people start coming back in. If you've done nothing with the business to grow in 2 months and cultivate this culture, this new culture, these new expectations, I think you might be in some trouble. Because I know me personally, if I'm out of work for 2 months and my business isn't going for 2 months, it's going to be a pretty big struggle for me to get going again, because there's still going to be a little bit of a gap at the back end of this where you have to get back into the normal groove of things, right?
Absolutely. No, And you're bringing up a great point is, in 2 months from now, are you going to be more prepared or less prepared? And, if you're not doing that work now to prepare yourself, you can't just be like, oh, in 2 months, now I'm going to start preparing. Because guess what? 2 months before that, you should have been doing the work now, the need that you need to do to be ready for when everything might be over and done with. But then again, who really knows when the over and done with really will come? So, flexibility especially is key for today. And being able to say to, not just to your team, but to yourself is, I don't really know. I don't really understand it. But you know what? I'm going to be working with my team members. I'm going to be working with my other leaders inside my organization on how do I prepare for that 2 months, 3 months, whatever it may be. So,
And
um,
that's on that note, Brian, you bring up such a phenomenal point where you have to talk to your team, talking about this honesty and authenticity and having setting your ego aside to tell your team, I don't know all the answers right now. This is uncharted. But a great part of being a great leader is asking for that feedback from them. Ask them those questions of what do you think is the best way to get through this right now? How do you, from your position and what you're doing, how would you say is the best way for you to get your job accomplished right now? And I think that's such a great point to look at, because if you're not doing that, but you haven't done their job in 10 years because you're an executive now, you're not going to best understand how to facilitate what they need. Right. So asking those questions and having that team involvement, that team conversation where they're now creating a strategy for and with you, I think that's what's going to really set people aside right now.
and it'll also it give them that like you said earlier, I think it's fantastic, the buying piece. Because if you're not buying into your organization, you're going to be looking for that first exit sign. You're going to be looking for that first exit door. You're going to be looking for that organization that does give you the buy-in per se. And I want to close today out with this. With if somebody were to walk up to you and say, Zach, what's one inspiring message you could give me to make me understand how I'm going to get through this on the better side of things? What would you tell that person?
Mm, two things. I have to go with two things. Sorry. It's hard to boil down to one. There's a
Hey, two
great
is good.
book.
Two is fine. Two is great. But I can't say that to two.
So there's a great book I read once upon a time, I believe it was John Maxwell, called Failing Forward. Now is such a great time to realize, and failure is that's a whole different conversation, talking about the perspective of what failure truly is. But using these obstacles to move forward is so key. And then the great Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, we just got punched in the mouth. Now what's your plan?
And that, I mean, by itself is great perspective because you're right. We have been punched in the mouth. Our organizations have been punched in the mouth. Your teams have been punched in the mouth. How are you, as a creating that plan, make it on the fly? Again, we have to think about this. We weren't ready for this. We weren't prepared. But now we can prepare. We can, organize ourselves in a way that makes sense. So, great perspectives today, Zach. And I hope, our leaders that watching this and our audience that watches this are reaching out to you and having, further conversations, because it is a great conversation for a lot of leaders to have with somebody that says, hey, you know what are you looking at? How are you preparing for 3 months from now? How are you preparing even 6 months from now? What kind of plans have you put in place to prepare your teams to re-enter the office? Because you, I mean, you cannot tell that oh, we'll never go back to our offices. Well, maybe you will. Are you ready for that? Have you written that kind of plan out for, we only allow 10 people into the office, and another week another 10, and then all the way up until you have your full team in there. So having the conversation pieces, having the conversation in general, fantastic. Thank you, Zach, for your time today. I really appreciate it, and I hope those of you guys that are watching this, guys and girls that are watching this, reach out to Zach, have that conversation, and get that perspective that you might be like, man, I had never really thought about that. But again, that's why we're here. That's why I'm doing this. That's why King is joining us too, because we want to share that. We want to be able to have you guys thinking outside that box, because it is such a unique time. And it's a great time though. It's a really great time. So Zach, thank you so much for your time. Um, and we're gonna have this episode up on YouTube, and by all means, share it, like it, subscribe to our channel, because that's how we're gonna get this message out. And Zach, if you know of anybody that would fit into this show, by all means, let's have a conversation. I would love to have a conversation with them. And you're more than welcome to have another show with us, and I would love to have it again. Maybe in a week or 2 weeks or even a month from now, have a recap session. Because again, you never know what could be changed from a month, and that's another thing
Absolutely.
I think we should all think of is, just doing something now, but things change in a month or even a week. So keep those conversations going, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you, Zach, for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been fun chatting with you and getting to meet you virtually now, since we can't meet in person yet. And maybe in some
Absolutely.
future we will meet at Bunker Labs or one of the other Atlanta veteran events. So thank you,
Sounds
Zach.
good.
Though
And Bryan,
it's
thank you
been
so
great.
much for. Well, I appreciate you having me on, man.
I'm loving this. I'm actually having a blast, and I hope our audience is enjoying this as much as I am. So, anyways, you guys have a great day. We'll be in touch. We'll chat soon. Again, Bryan Shue with Lockdown with Thought Leaders. Zack Knight, fantastic man. Have a great day. We'll chat soon, brother.